Bitcoin is it's money, it's gold, it's real estate, it's a digital real estate, it's store of value, is everything that the fiat money don't have. And crypto is just a version of the fiat money. People can keep printing money. There is a CEO in charge of a company. And Bitcoin doesn't have a CEO. Bitcoin is a decentralized technology. But I don't know if that's...
Just to follow up one thing, I like what you said at the end, that really crypto is just a digital version of fiat. It's taking, instead of the governments being able to print that money, now you're giving that right to individuals. With the way Bitcoin, from the inception, it didn't have a pre-mine. It didn't have, tokens that were given to VC people that were held that they're going to dump on the market. And with proof of work, you have to actually earn. You have to put that energy into the money to produce it. So nobody can just conjure it out of thin air. And so I think that is what makes it different. It is truly money. It is truly a store of value, where most crypto projects, they're either focused on a technology to do something, or the ones that are trying to be money, they just want to be money long enough to dump it on other people and have some type of exit liquidity. And so they see other people as a way to be able to make money. But Bitcoin is the only one that had this natural inception that makes it fair for everybody. Everybody's on the same playing field.
Yeah, and just adding something that came to my mind now is like, Bitcoin is like, it doesn't exist another thing that you can call like an asset, investment, a technology that if we are into Bitcoin and we want more people get into Bitcoin, but it's like more people get into Bitcoin, we benefit from it. More new people get into it. If you already hold Bitcoin and more people, Bitcoin is like, with other things, if you're discovering something, like if you're investing in a company, you don't want to tell like many people. You want to take advantage of that knowledge, of that thing that you're discovering, And Bitcoin is not like, it doesn't matter how much Bitcoin you have to someone that just hold a few sats. It's the same. It's equal opportunity for everyone,
Yeah, so I think it's very important that we, keep driving on this, the distinction between shitcoins and Bitcoin. And I think what you said, you just want people to learn. And you're not trying to convince anyone to invest a certain amount, like even a couple of sats, just to get started, or just tell them how to learn more. Basically, that's what I do. I keep telling people, just visit this link, read this book, learn more. And I think the main point that Mike made that is very important, Bitcoin cannot be replicated. You can never do this again. Nobody else can replicate what Bitcoin is. And anything that has a CEO at the top or a company at the top or anyone that is driving their own incentive, and to explain a little bit more, fiat is just money, right? US dollar, euro, any other currency basically that is controlled by a central entity or authority and can just be printed out of thin air. So similar to money being printed by central banks out of thin air because it's not backed by gold anymore, a stock as well, in a company can be printed endlessly, basically, into eternity. So just like that, any centralized blockchain, like Ethereum, for example, Vitalik Buterin owns a significant amount of Ethereum, and that can just be dumped into the market and can pump Ethereum up and create more, finance more developers to build on it, but it's still centralized. So that is the main distinction between the two largest, right? And similar to that, they can actually decide to add more. Bitcoin can never change, you can never change that, the basics. 21 million, that's it, forever, right? It can never be changed. But I'd like to, Nicki, you and James as well, to give your perspective on why Bitcoin and not shitcoins.
I was going to actually sort of say what you said, Maya, is the fact that there is only 21 million. they aren't going to be able to print or produce anymore. And the fact that there isn't a CEO, Satoshi Nakamoto, has disappeared. And so having a shitcoin or a cryptocurrency that has a CEO, you're going to be able to have the big guns come knocking on the door, with guns and saying, hey, we want that information. And they are going to be able to, get inside, take that crypto. And, there is no sort of, you don't have personal control over cryptocurrency. Whereas with your Bitcoin, when you hold it yourself securely, you have control over it.
That's my cue. Here we go. So for me, I agree with what's been said, and I think something that's super important is eventually Bitcoin is more than money. It's a philosophy. It's a life philosophy. In a way, Bitcoin is really simple, but here's the hard part. You're going to have to take responsibility if you really want to benefit from Bitcoin. So one of my favorite analogies to basically sum up what these guys have said is that we all know in the world that there's good quality food and poor quality food. If we eat too much poor quality food, eventually we get sick. Similar with money, and this is the thing, I'm going to give you some homework to take responsibility. Learn what money is, hard money or sound money specifically. That's the homework to give people. And then you say, well, if you use poor quality money a lot of the time, eventually you will become sick. You'll become sick financially. A country becomes sick financially. The world becomes sick financially. So if we start using a high quality money, we can become healthy again. Learn what hard money is, sound money is. Start using it. Start small. Start with $100 in terms of learning as an education. Once you take that and start learning what hard and sound money are, you can change your life. This is simple, but it's actually quite hard. That's pretty much my summary. I hope that's a distillation of what we're talking about here. It's going to be self-responsibility. It's going to be a life philosophy. It's about wanting to be healthy financially. But once you learn that it's about health financial, you want to make your relationships healthy, your mind healthy, your body healthy, and that's where the philosophy side of it comes in.
Yeah, that's a really good explanation, especially because, once you dive into the rabbit hole and you learn more and more and more about Bitcoin, and you stop focusing on all the other buzzwords and nonsense and lies out there or people that are just trying to make money off of you, and you just kind of take a deeper dive into the technology, it actually becomes more about health and more about low time preference, more about energy, more about what actually is driving the fiat world, right? It's a war machine. It's endless money printing to fund corrupt governments, to fund war internationally, to fund this baseless system that only benefits the top 1% and doesn't benefit the rest of the people, right? And Bitcoin is what gives power back to the 99%, the rest of the world, basically, and makes it more of an equal playing field. I have a follow-up question actually based off of that. And, most of the people here, when I speak to them, are not familiar with Bitcoin Beach, let alone Berlin. So I would like to know from you, Mike, why or how you even ended up in El Salvador. Why, as a Bitcoiner, did you even decide to start, Bitcoin Beach? How did it get started? What was the plan? Because Bitcoin wasn't legal tender in El Salvador, so that's not what got you there, right? And then, Roman, why did you join? And then Nicki and James, what inspired you to move to El Salvador, Berlin, how that story got started, and what inspired you to do that in El Salvador?
So originally I went to El Salvador not for Bitcoin. It was actually before Bitcoin was even invented. Was there on a surf trip and fell in love with the country, and we decided to move our family there. And one of the things that I saw as we became part of the community was just the struggle that people faced because of the financial system. So we saw this continual flow of people out of El Zonte there, leaving to the U.S., often illegally, seeking to be able to send money back for their families and be able to provide for their families because there was no economic path forward for them in El Salvador. And a lot of that had to do with the financial system, the way that it was set up. And it was shocking to me as I would talk to people. For me as an American, very privileged, it was easy to send money different places, especially within the U.S. But I realized for these poor people from El Salvador, when they would try to send money back from the U.S. to El Salvador, they would have to pay huge fees to be able to do it. And not just that, oftentimes they couldn't do it because they didn't have the proper ID or they couldn't get the proper bank accounts. And it struck me that it was really holding people back. And not only that, it was causing them to not really live for the future. They would spend what they had for the day because they felt like, well, I don't know even what tomorrow brings, and so there's no real hope or even reason to save for the future. And so people never acquired assets. They never built anything. They were stuck on this treadmill of just living day to day. And so as we started working in the community, we were encouraging kids to stay in school, to finish high school, to go to university. But often they would ask us, but why? There's no job opportunities. There's no reason to do this. And that was hard because you didn't have an answer. It was like, in the U.S., it was easy to tell people to stay in school because they could earn much more. They'd have much more opportunity. But in El Salvador, that wasn't there. And so as we started kind of thinking, okay, how can we transform things? And we had somebody come to us and say, hey, why don't you start using Bitcoin in the projects that you're doing? And once we did that, we realized that was a way to teach people how the financial system worked. It was to get them to think for the first time that when they are spending money today on something they don't really need, that they're forfeiting that opportunity to use that in the future to build a business or to build a home or something like that. And so we saw when people started earning Bitcoin and started understanding that over time the value of that would go up, it incentivized them to save for the first time, to think of the future for the first time. And so for me, that is why Bitcoin is really transformational. It really changes people's minds. And there's a saying in the Bitcoin community that you don't change Bitcoin, Bitcoin changes you. And we really saw that firsthand, that with these young people, they had hope for the first time, and they switched gears from thinking of trying to go to the U.S. and work in some low-level job to, no, I want to be a part of building the future in El Salvador, and they were able to save and accumulate enough assets to open businesses and to be part of that future.
Thank you. I'm getting teary-eyed because, we have the same problem here. There's a very high dropout rate, and it's a very low percentage of people that actually go further into education. And we have the same lack of hope. People living day to day, basically in survival mode, in very dire circumstances, while government, steals most of the resources of the country that should actually be developing them. So it's very inspiring to hear how you were able to transform that for people in El Salvador. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, for me, I was a kid that born in Bitcoin Beach, and I was lucky when I was a kid that I can speak English because I got a scholarship to study English. My parents couldn't pay for my college. I didn't went to college because of that reason, but I was lucky to have this scholarship, and I studied English for almost 2 years, and that was the open door for me, just being able to speak English opened so many doors for me later in years. And for me, one of the things that we understanding is that if you want your community or your country change, you gotta do your part as well. Like you have to be the change that you wanna see in your community or in your country. the easy way is to leave, but to live to Netherlands, like to have a better quality life, or living in the USA, but I think when you understand that people underestimating, like, people have big dreaming, like, we will change the world, we will do this, but the first change starts with you, doing the right thing in your community, and for us, it's just trying to give back to our community, trying to teach kids about dreams, trying to keeping the kids having quality times, talking them like with love, that I don't know here, but in El Salvador it was hard because a lot of parents were obligating to leave the United States because trying to look for better opportunities, and working there and sending back money to their kids. But their kids stay at home without the most important thing that we need when we're a kid, that is love, that is like someone that got you, someone that put time on you. And so it's why we get involved into the project. And the other thing is, when you understand Bitcoin, is one of the biggest things for me was Bitcoin bring financial education. And before Bitcoin, I didn't understand money. I didn't understand how the fiat money works. I didn't understanding like why we don't learning about money in the school when money is so important in our life, When we working for money, we save money, we imagine that one day we will retire with a lot of money, but why we don't get educated about that, And I think when you understand that, it's like now you can see and you see the problems that are like so obviously, and you want to do something about it. But before Bitcoin, we were doing our work. We were like teaching English, teaching computer, but the fact is that if you want to make changes and families and people, you got to teach them about money. They need to understand about money. If families don't understand about money, their situation is going to be hard, It's going to be hard that they change, So Bitcoin have been that tool for us to allow to do all the things that we want to do. And also, when you have a dream, a personal dream, it's okay. You have a goal. You wake up every morning and you working towards this dream, this goal. But Bitcoin is a collective dream. This is how I see it. I think Bitcoin is this dream that so many people see the same thing. So many people are not agree with so many things that are happening, and we all come by together, And this is the proof of work, How many people are here for the first time because of Bitcoin, for example? Like that. If you will, say like, oh, I have a dream, I'm going to do this. It's Maya's dream, but this is like, it's a Bitcoin dream. It's like Suriname is a Bitcoin dream. It's a quality dream. It's a dream that we all can come and we all can do our part. And this is beautiful. And this is, I think, what's happening in El Salvador as well.
Yes. So when I speak to kids here, when I speak to parents here, we have the same thing. We have a lot of people that are leaving the country looking for better opportunity, not realizing that it's not much better. When you go to the Netherlands, it's life is expensive. You don't keep much of the money that you make. You are still in survival mode, still trying to make it through the day. Especially if you don't have a degree, or if you don't have the right connections or the right certifications, it's still hard. And I see a lot of people moving, but I also see parents working 3 jobs, 2, 3 jobs here to be able to take care of their kids, to be able to support their family, because the average salary here is what, 250 US, 300 US if you're lucky. Other than that, it's even lower. So you cannot take care of a family on that. You cannot buy a house with that. You cannot afford rent with that, let alone put food on the table. So there are a lot of families where kids don't eat for, days at a time. And you have a pretty difficult situation for a large percentage of the population here as well. And when I speak to these kids, to these parents, living in survival mode, they don't have hope, right? So continuing on with you, Nicki and James, what inspired you to, start Berlin and create the circular economy, and what motivates you to, I'm assuming also that same level of hope, right? And giving that to people, but I'll leave the answer to you.
I think, Roman, you sort of nailed it on the head. Be the change that you want to see in the world is something really big. We left New Zealand under 3 years ago. We'd never been to El Salvador before, but Bukele had put the flag in the ground, and we bought sold everything up and bought one-way tickets to El Salvador. We were down at the beach for about 18 months, and we were living in a beach club. It wasn't El Salvador at all, and we really felt that we needed to get out. And we had the opportunity to get up to Berlin, and we saw the effects of 2 Salvadorians who actually had already started the circular economy in Berlin, and it was a real grassroots movement, and we wanted to be part of it because we saw that now here was an opportunity that we could be the change that we wanted to see in the world.
Very much. This isn't about Nicki and James at all. This is about the hope that the local Surinamese people can have from the local Salvadoran people. We were inspired by 2 Salvadorans who had done the My First Bitcoin education, and they were teachers, and so they learned about Bitcoin, they learned about money, they learned about the responsibility they needed to take, and they found a town that they were like, hey, this looks like a good place to build a Bitcoin citadel on top of a volcano, and we were inspired by them. And to any people in Suriname that also want to change the world, if you think you're crazy enough to change the world, just give it a go, because it's possible. We've been. It's not about Nicki and James. We're just amplifying the amazing things that we've seen in El Salvador.
I actually like that quote. The people that think that they're crazy enough to change the world are the ones that actually do.
Thank you, Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Steve James.
Well, Mike, to actually follow up a little bit on that, you teach kids to surf. That has nothing to do with Bitcoin, right? But how does that relate to a circular? What is a circular economy? How does the whole thing work actually? What is a circular economy?
We teach kids how to surf, but we don't surf anymore.
No, I think that's an important point, and I think that's something that a lot of times when you hear Bitcoin talked about on the news or in other things, they talk about it like making money, or people refer to it as number go up, like that you're going to get rich. That's not what a circular Bitcoin economy is about. A circular Bitcoin economy sees Bitcoin as a tool. It's not the end goal. Like our end goal isn't just to get more people to use Bitcoin. Our end goal is to see young people prosper and thrive. And so we see Bitcoin as a tool to allow them to do that. Because under the fiat system, it's constantly robbing them. And so they're always falling behind, and they can never get ahead. And you see families, we saw it in El Salvador, families fall apart because they cannot provide for their families in El Salvador, so they would leave to the U.S. You see fathers and mothers grow, their kids grow up without knowing their fathers and mothers because they're in the U.S. and just sending money back to them. So they don't have that relationship with them. So for us, a circular Bitcoin economy is kind of breaking that cycle of destruction and making it so that mothers and fathers don't have to leave their kids, that they can earn an income that is good, and the money will hold its value. They don't have to be in a rush to spend it before it loses value. They actually are encouraged to save it because it's going to buy more in the future. And that encourages a total mindset shift where you think, okay, I don't need to buy this extra toy or this extra Coca-Cola. I'm going to actually save this money for my family's future and make sure it doesn't leave the immediate economy. It circulates. So when I value something that my neighbor produces, I'm gonna pay them in Bitcoin, and it's gonna have to really have value for me to be willing to part with my Bitcoin. So they're gonna produce a better product. And then that person is going to go and spend it, at the local store, and you see it circulate, and you see people being able to raise each other up and not have to leave the community. So for us, the surfing and the other things, like that is the end goal, to have time with the kids, to have time for community. That is what Bitcoin provides.
Yeah, and quality time, I think, is something that in El Salvador, our parents, I don't know here in Suriname, but I know in the United States or in Canada or in Netherlands, the parents bring the kids after school to do extra activities, right? Like swimming, dance, music, piano, And it's there where you really find your passions. Like you developing the things that you might be interesting on music, and football. I don't know. For us, who doesn't know, El Salvador is big in surfing, That's one of the biggest thing for tourism is surfing. And one of the way to connect in surfing with Bitcoin is that some of the kids that were part of the project early on in the project, now they're start teaching surfing, and now they're getting paid in Bitcoin, they're offering surfing classes, and they're getting paid in Bitcoin, and that is they're doing really well because there are a lot of people that want to learn surf, and exciting also to pay in Bitcoin.
So, what I'm hearing basically that it's more about children, about the future, about giving back to community and creating community, where, like for example, in Suriname right now, everybody's survival mode. There are some parents who can afford to bring their kids to hobbies and encourage them to do other things, but the majority. Kids actually can't do anything else. They're stuck at home. They don't even know what to eat, or can't afford to go somewhere, can't afford to have a hobby. And for us, football, soccer, whatever you want to call it, is a source of hope for a lot of families, for a lot of kids. Can you tell us more about how this change for community, how this what you're giving these kids basically, how Bitcoin, and not just Bitcoin, what you're doing actually in El Salvador, how that has actually impacted, like what are some of the experiences that you've had with families that have changed, or the impact that you can see actually happening there, that you can see maybe happening in Suriname, or hopefully happening in Suriname in the short term, and the impact that it can have on these families here.
I think one of the biggest things that impacts people's future is their ability to acquire assets that will produce wealth for them in the future. And so in El Salvador, you go back 10 years, the culture was one of spending as soon as you got it. And there was no sense of trying to save for the future because they didn't have access to the stock market or other things that would allow the value to go up. And so in their mind, they needed to spend it as fast as they got it because prices were going up all the time. So there was no incentive to save. So people didn't acquire that financial capital to build a future for themselves. And we saw when they switched to a Bitcoin standard, the people, their salary didn't go up necessarily in dollar terms, but they actually started realizing that they could save if they made choices to save. So in the past, they would say, hey, there's no way for me to save. I only make $300 a month. How can I save? But once we started paying them in Bitcoin, every time they went to spend it, they would be like, I don't want to spend it now because I think it's going to be worth more a year from now. And it put into them this mindset of really making sacrifices right now in order to have the benefits in the future. And so we saw people for the first time coming to us and saying, yes, I'm gonna buy a car or a bicycle or a motorcycle. And we're like, well, where did you get the money? And they're like, well, I've been saving. Well, 2 years ago, you told me you couldn't save and your salary hasn't gone up. And they're like, yeah, but I've made choices in my life and I'm saving. And now the money I'm saving is actually going up in value. So in Bitcoin terms, this thing I've been saving for is actually less than it was 2 years ago instead of more. And so we see that mindset, like when that shifts, it really makes them shift from thinking like it's only going to keep getting worse to like, no, the future is going to get better and better. And when you have that hope that the future is going to be better, you're willing to make sacrifices, you're willing to take risks on opening businesses and doing other things. And so it's really shifted the whole mentality of the culture. And so we've seen in El Zante, which is a small beach town, only 3,000 people. It used to be in the morning when you would get up, you'd see the bus station. Everybody would be at the bus station looking to catch the bus to go into the capital city, to go some other place to be able to work. Now in the morning, you see the buses coming in and dropping people off because people are coming from all of the surrounding areas to work in El Zante because it has become an economic driver because you have all these people starting businesses, you have this influx of tourists from around the world, and you have a new sense of hope. And so that's how I feel like it's really has changed in our community, and I see that same potential in Suriname. There's so many similarities between Suriname and El Salvador, and so I see just that opportunity being at your guys' doorstep here also.
Yeah, and when we started the project, we didn't imagine that we will like when President Bukele we started the project in 2019, but when President Bukele made Bitcoin a legal tender, it's like it had been crazy, to have people from all over the world, like one ticket to El Salvador, and stay there now for 3 years. And like Nicki and James, there's so many people that just show up every month, every week. You have new people, and the changes that came from there is huge, because also a lot of companies are now setting business in El Salvador, and looking for like local people. They want to hire local people, but professional local people that have skills, that have knowledge. In El Salvador, I think all the people that were already into technology, like developers, like more tech, they're already working with some Bitcoin companies, and they're fighting each other to get the talents, So just to give you a few examples, like for example, a couple, like 3 guys, really young, they start making like shoes, personalized shoes, and they start like selling these shoes in El Zonte with Bitcoin, and then they posting on Twitter, and someone from Canada say, can you ship into Canada? I want to buy a pair of shoes. Can you ship into Mexico? Can you ship into the United States? I don't know how many pair of shoes they sold. Probably they didn't have a establishing business. They didn't have like a bank account that they can receive their payment. But you know how they were able to sell these shoes? Through Bitcoin, And that is, it's a big opportunity, because something that it's like the world opening for you, right? Like another example, it was some people start asking like, is someone that can teaching Spanish to me? I'm in Switzerland, I'm in Canada, and we start putting in contact with some local people and say like, hey, can you sit with this person? She's willing to pay you $10 per an hour just to have conversation in Spanish, and you can get paid in Bitcoin. It's like $10 in Bitcoin when the normal salary per day is between $15 and $20 for 8 hours. That's a lot, and that's how Bitcoin is bringing opportunities to people, It's not that, I don't know, like, we all need to understanding what role Bitcoin play in our life and in the level that we are,
I'm sorry, just one more example. There's a family that lives across from where the Bitcoin Beach offices are. They have a little store and little pizza restaurant. And I'm talking to the owner of that store, and she said that in the past she was reliant on her kids that were in the U.S. to send her money every month just to be able to make it to get by. And since the Bitcoin has kind of started becoming a big part of El Zonte, her business has flourished there. She's been saving in Bitcoin, and she said recently her family members in the U.S. were sick, and she's able to send them money to help them. And so you see this reversal from rather than her having to depend on money coming back from the U.S., she's actually able to send and support money to her kids. So just imagine for here in Suriname that you're able to help your family out that's in the Netherlands. You see that kind of reversal happen.
One of the things with Berlin is that it has only been going for 1 year or just over 1 year, so it is a lot younger than El Zonte. We set up a community centre at the beginning of this year, and one of the gentlemen from the United States has been supporting the community centre. And what he's doing, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but majority of Salvadorians, well, especially up in Berlin and in the small country towns, don't speak English, so they only speak Spanish. And so he's been sponsoring a student a month and to learn English. Now, of course, because they have to be in Berlin and they have to be part of the community centre, they're coming into the community centre to do support work. We've set up a podcast studio, and what we've found is some students who all of a sudden have had this interest in dealing with the podcasts, being able to, technology, and now they can come in and they can set up their own little podcast. And so they're able to share their stories of Bitcoin and how it's helped them in the community, and it's amazing. So more and more students are now coming to the centre to go, oh wow, this is a place to hang out, this is a place where we can learn, and we've got computers here we can use, we've got a podcast studio we can use, we've got a library, we can learn about Bitcoin and financial information, and so it's really, that's been really effective for us.
Where do I start? Bitcoin, I think Bitcoiners, the people that actually, we're a special breed of people, and we're attracted to these communities where we can go and use this new money and spread the hope and the opportunity that comes with it. So saving is a huge part of it. If you can, start saving. That's the best thing that you can teach people. When we've distributed Bitcoin here, we've said, please save it. Now, what I'm going to say is there's a whole heap of small business owners in Berlin that have benefited from this process. Basically, the foreigners were spending, might have been one transaction in a month or one transaction in a week for these people. And because we weren't their normal business, they were saving the Bitcoin. And so what's been happening is we've had, for example, a tourist operator. He has been so grateful for all the tourists that come and want to pay him in Bitcoin, because these tourists weren't there before. They were never there. And so, as Mike mentioned, there's new business coming into the town, new capital coming into the town, and it's changing people's lives. Then we've had little food vendors who we were the only ones basically buying from them. They were saving the Bitcoin. It got to $100, and they're like, whoa, what do I do with this? This is a lot of money for me. And then the price went up. It went to 120, and they're like, they come to the community center and they're like, what do I do? Help me, in a good way, right? And then there's been a number of other business owners that are also benefiting from the new people coming in and the new capital coming in. But there is also opportunity that we're starting to see it circulate in the community. I don't want it to just seem like you have to bring in these tourists. As Nicki said, we're training people to also provide remote work so they can bring new capital into the country, so they're not always reliant on the tourist business. They're learning new skills where they can go into the internet, as Roman said, and sell things online, sell their skills, sell physical items, and you're not restricted by a bank account, a credit card, a website, anything like that. You can actually get paid in Bitcoin directly.
Hi, Maya. Before we continue, can we please do one more question from the panel and head over to questions from the audience, because we have a lot of people in the audience who want to have questions for you guys.
All right. Yeah, I have actually just one more question, and then I was going to do that. But so for me personally, just something that I can relate to in El Salvador very closely. You know, when I was a kid, my dad was murdered because of corruption, because of drug trafficking, because of money laundering, because of, you know, everything that's wrong with the world today. And I still see it in my country now. You know, I still see those influences of corruption. I still see that influence of you know, that world, basically. But when I went to El Salvador the first time, 2021, I could sense the fear. You could sense the fear in people. You could sense the tension, you know, needing to not being able to go everywhere, needing to hide. Like, I had to hide in the back of a truck because they told me you don't want people the gangs to see you here, because otherwise you might get kidnapped or we might get robbed, so you need to hide. And I saw the change being there this year. Like, people have hope. It's free. You can go anywhere. It's safe, right? El Salvador was the murder capital of the world. You had gangs that controlled the country, basically, and were murdering people every day. So El Salvador, to me, is an example of how a country can change drastically by just changing that environment, basically. So I'd like to hear your personal experiences with that, and how, you know, how you see that has changed over the years.
Yeah, it's been shocking to see the transformation that has happened, especially in the last 5 years. Even the town of El Zante, where we live, which is like a tourist town, that for the most part, you know, people didn't. A lot of that stuff was kind of hidden behind the scenes. But we saw in 2016, we had within my neighborhood, 3 of our neighbors were murdered within a 3-week period. In fact, I heard the neighbor that lived in front of me get shot 40 times, like at midnight. It was actually ironically, it was the night of Donald Trump's first election when he won. I guess that was 8 years ago. And I was up watching the election results and heard these 40 shots ring out. And so it was a very real thing. And so it's been remarkable to see the transformation that's happened. And obviously it's not all credited to Bitcoin. Nayib Bukele, the president, has made this major push. He's really transformed things, and it's shown us like how important it is to have leadership that really cares about the country and is willing to take a stand and is not in it for themselves or to try to just benefit themselves and enrich themselves. But I think that embracing Bitcoin has been part of that. And I think even his embracing of Bitcoin as legal tender showed that it wasn't about him trying to bring wealth to himself, but trying to benefit to the country, because he embraced the currency that he can't control. So most governments don't want to give up control of the fiat currency. They want to be able to print, because then they can print and give money to their friends and families and make sure that they personally benefit from that. But Bitcoin is a system that it keeps leaders in check. It makes sure that they can't enrich themselves from the financial system. And so I think that has been just so encouraging to me to see the fact that we have leadership there that is thinking long term and is making decisions not in his own best interest, but in the country's best interest.
So when we moved to El Salvador, it was before Bukele put the martial law in. So I think I was crazy, I'm not sure, but we did pack up and move to El Salvador. You know, we came from New Zealand where it's free, it's green, it's, you know, there's no razor wire, there's no guns, there's nothing like that. So for our first month or so, walking along the streets, and pretty much, you know, every second store has a guard with a shotgun and the razor wire. There was no signage, nobody really, there was a really heavy feel about El Salvador. And then 6 weeks later, the weekend came where the horrific murders happened, and James and I were even, you know, thinking, we had just hired a car for the weekend, so we were going to go exploring. We rang out the Salvadorian friends and said, oh, look, you know, is it safe? Can we come out? And they said, yeah, not a problem. So we still went, but we put treks in place. We said, well, if there's a dead dog on the road or if someone's lying on the road, we're not stopping. You know, we're just going to keep driving because we had to be home by dark. And it was just things that we put in place to make sure we felt safe.
Yeah, it's been a huge transformation, and we've been privileged. It may sound weird, but we've been super privileged to be able to experience that transformation, and we're super lucky. As Mike was alluding to, Bukele it's taken a great leader to actually do it, but what's ironic about it is this great leader has given the people a tool, Bitcoin, to actually take the power back, to quote Rage Against the Machine, but to take the power back, and they could actually tell the government what to do, but it's going to be put back on the people. The people are going to have to take responsibility. They're going to have to start saving. They need to start using this tool, and then they can take the power back. And I guess I just wish more people would see that and grab that and run with that, because you don't have to wait for a great leader to come along. You as a people can start being the change you want to see in the world.
And a great leader also inspire people to do things, you know, like to get, you know, to help, you know, do your part. So I think that's what's happening in El Salvador. Like the president inspires so many people to wants to do something good, you know, like helping in Bitcoin education, building companies, building like helping people, like it's a non-stop, right? That people come and say, how can I get involved? How can I help? So people will come here as well. But I want to say this, like, you gotta be involved, guys. Like, I don't know how many Bitcoin merchants you have here. You were posting they were like 100, right? Like, this is a project that is your project. It's a Suriname project. You gotta support him. Don't expecting that things will change if you keep in doing the same things, right? Like, don't expecting that leaders will stand up if they don't have also your support, you know? And I think support this. Like, I think this is not, we're living in El Salvador, and El Salvador is already doing this, and it's proving that Bitcoin is hope, that things can change, you know. And we were in Nashville this year, and it was crazy to have the two candidates running for president for the United States talking about how they will integrate Bitcoin into the United States of America, you know. I think that was crazy, and now that Donald Trump win, I think everyone have like a big expectation what's gonna happen, you know. And I think this is just a matter of time that more countries will start getting in. And is Suriname the next Bitcoin country? It's depending on you. But I was having a coffee with someone this morning, and he told us, I want investing here. But I don't want to do, I'm just waiting the right moment to invest in, you know. And like, as El Salvador proved that will have been attracting so many people from around the world, I think a lot of people will come to do the same thing. If Suriname do the right things?
Well, thank you all for, telling us about El Salvador. I think it's a story that gives a lot of hope, especially to us here. An example of what could happen, can happen, will happen in Suriname as well. I'd like to, shoot it to the audience to be able to ask a couple of questions. After that, we do have to let Mike and Roman go. Yeah. Then we have to let them go because they have to rush to the airport.
Hello. Yeah. Good morning. My name is Romeo Haas. I want to thank Mike, Roman, Nicki, James, and Maya very, very much for sharing this inspirational stories with us. You all agree that internet gives the individual, every average person, the opportunity to become, like, if he have this ambition, a multinational. I remember 14, 15 years ago, I was living in Europe, and thanks to the internet, I was flipping luxury items and made like €500,000 on my own in 3 years. And now I'm living in Suriname, and we cannot, from Suriname, as individuals or as small entrepreneurs, we cannot monetize our skills or knowledge online, international. So I'm wondering, I can imagine that in El Salvador, the people encounter the same problems I just described. How does your project help those people there in El Salvador to connect to the international market, to be able to monetize their skill or business or knowledge, or whatever? And the second question, it's related to this one. Is there already an infrastructure in place, or are you busy working on it for the diaspora people, like from El Salvador, who send money to their people back home? Because here is still a problem. You have to pay high fees or go stand in a line at MoneyGram to receive money when somebody sends money to you from abroad. So I was just wondering if you can share some directions for solutions to be able to, for individuals and small entrepreneurs to pick up online opportunities.
So I'll answer the second part first. Yeah, we've seen in El Salvador, there are a number of people that are using Bitcoin now to send remittances back from the US to El Salvador and able to avoid fees. It's not the majority of people, it's still a small percentage. But the other thing that we've seen is the MoneyGram and the other money transfer companies.
Western Union?
Western Union have lowered their fees because they understand now they have to compete with Bitcoin. And so even the people that aren't using Bitcoin directly are benefiting from the introduction of Bitcoin in the country, because they used to be that they would have these high fees because people didn't have any other choice. Now they have other choices. And so we're seeing it help the people. On the first part question, we are seeing it open people up to the international market. We had somebody in El Zante who was trained as an architect, and he was able to get a job working for a construction company in the US, but to stay in El Salvador, and he was able to do stuff online. And the only reason he was able to do that, to evaluate plans for them and to work on blueprints, was because he could receive his payment in Bitcoin. Otherwise, they would not have been able to hire them. We're seeing small guest houses and little hotels that don't have the ability to accept credit cards. Now they can take reservations where people put their deposits in Bitcoin. We're seeing, as Roman was mentioning earlier, people that are teaching Spanish lessons online. They're able to do that because they can receive payment in Bitcoin. So it really allows people to connect to the international market, to stay in El Salvador, to be with their family, but to connect to the broader opportunities worldwide.
Also, last year, I think this is one of the biggest bets for the country, that if the generation get training on Bitcoin technology now, El Salvador can become the hub where companies can come and hire in like professionals, you know, to working in Bitcoin technology. But one of the biggest projects that we did last year and we did this year as well is with my first Bitcoin and Bitcoin Beach, we partnering with the Minister of Education and we training last year 150 teachers from the public schools, and these 150 teachers training around 2,500 students. That was last year. This year we're training around 410 teachers, and these teachers went back to their schools and they training around 8,000 students from the public schools, you know. So we had a meeting with the Minister of Education, the Bitcoin office, Stacy, my first Bitcoin, for the next year, what is the plan for Bitcoin education in the public schools? And I think it's going to be big, and it's one of the most exciting projects because if we want Salvadorian having opportunities, we need to educate them. And I don't think so there is another country where the Minister of Education is sitting in a Bitcoin meeting thinking how to implementing like Bitcoin education in the public schools, you know. So that's pretty big. And also there is other organizations like Plan B working also to training like more technicals like in Bitcoin related, you know, like training like Cubo Plus, for example, is another organization, No Nation, that they are trying to teach Salvadorian people that are more tech to become programmers, developers. And the first courses that they have been doing, like I mentioned it before, all of them, they're already working with some Bitcoin startups. So I think the model, the path that we'll follow is there, you know. It's just a matter of time, and it took time as well, you know. But we're there.
Thank you. Great question. The short answer is yes, but there are buts. And I'd be more than happy to talk to you about the tools to help you achieve that, if you like, afterwards. The greatest challenge is actually finding the market that is willing to move into the money and do the things that are needed to do to get the payment across the borders. And then there's also this side of the fence here in Suriname, where we need to start supporting the Bitcoin community and the Bitcoin businesses as much as we can, because you're going to need the liquidity pool on this side to live as much as you need to pull it from the other side. So afterwards, please, let's have a talk. Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? One. All right. We're going to take one more question then, and then I'm going to let the panel go.
Okay. My name is Orson. Thank you for coming, and it really is interesting.
Sorry, I think the microphone's not.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Orson. Thank you for having this, because for the past few years, Bitcoin education has been very difficult for everybody that's in Suriname. I think if it's not through someone else, then it's actually more difficult to do anything. But, sorry, it's not really that much of a mic person. But I would like to know if, for the education for our country, if there are actually any startups going to be for the next year. Because it is a small community. Bitcoin community in Suriname is very small. You can ask anybody. If you're not going to get cussed out because somebody thinks you're going to scam them, you're going to hear a lot of other nonsense or contradictory answers. So will there be any startups for the knowledge that we all actually do have for the other generation that is going to be wanting to know if they are able to at least profit from what we already have. Because Bitcoin can actually help, and I've already seen that happen for the past few years, but knowledge is power. But if you don't share it, it becomes a problem. It can choke a country, or it could develop it more. Just like you see with El Salvador. I didn't even know about it. It's actually very beautiful to see that the changes to a country are constantly flourishing. For someone that is here, I would love to see that for my own country, but startups, knowledge, and also the tools, that is what we lack. So that's what I want to know, if there are any plans for the coming year or years for Suriname. Thank you.
I think this is a question more for you.
Actually, could I jump in there? The answer, the short answer is yes. And I'm going to put it back on you to start with. Take responsibility and start researching. But I'm going to give you a great place to start. My first Bitcoin. It's actually in El Salvador. It's all free. It's all online. And the Bitcoin Community Center here is already running lessons. Get involved. That's where I'd like to start. And I'm sure you've got more great things.
Yeah, so on the educational part, as he said, my first Bitcoin, Mi Primer Bitcoin, is basically the course that they teach in El Salvador. We work together with Mi Primer based out of El Salvador, and we've already started the first class in Suriname at the Education Center, Verlengde Keizerstraat 17B. So if you want to learn the basics about Bitcoin and learn more, you can register for the Mi Primer classes at the Education Center. We're also reaching out to Kubo, to other startups that do more technical and skills actually that are relevant to developing on Bitcoin, developing on Lightning, and more of the applications. More companies are coming. So basically, the Education Center is like a little hub where you can learn more, to see how you can learn more about how Bitcoin can help your business, or what business opportunities are available, similar to what happened in El Salvador, to be able to execute that in Suriname successfully. And if you just want to learn more about Bitcoin, we have the Mi Primer classes, but there are Trezor Academy that runs, once every quarter. So we'll be rolling out more education as time passes. As we get, setting up the education center, we've just gotten started basically, so that's gonna keep growing. And we're looking actually for a second community center already in Efram Seichen. So we want to expand it and bring it closer to other communities as well that need it, where we can give them the skills to actually be able to earn internationally as well.
And where is the center? I don't know if everyone knows. Do you say it? Where is it?
Yeah, Verlengde Keizerstraat, 17B.
Okay, guys, can I cut in? So Maya, you just said we have to let our speakers head over to the airport. They will. I don't want you guys to be late. It's your first time in Suriname. I do not want you to be stranded in Suriname because of all the flights we have in Suriname. It's not that much. So if you have a window going out, I would say take it.
Yeah, and just I think the best way to educate yourself is like use Bitcoin. Like you have so many merchants here that are accepting Bitcoin. Go and spend Bitcoin, even if you have to buy some Bitcoin, go and spend. There is always like meaningful conversation around these merchants, and what we see in El Salvador is that there is not like, well, now we have like organizations working in Bitcoin education, but it didn't exist, like in the past years. And it's like you educate yourself when you want to learn about something. Everything is online, everything is open source. So just you need to looking for and go to these places, say like, can I pay in Bitcoin? I want a beer, I want a Coca-Cola, and then you will find always Bitcoiners that are willing to have these conversations about Bitcoin.
I just want to thank you guys for inviting us to your beautiful country. You guys have an amazing thing here, and we're going to be excited to see what you guys are able to build here.
Awesome. Nicki and James, any last remarks?
Yeah, again, yeah, thank you very much. And we're excited to share our story later on today. So, yeah, make sure you stick around.
Yes, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Please feel free to ask us any questions. Happy to share whatever we know. There's nothing we're trying to hide or anything. And if you want to learn, power to you, and I'll help you as much as I can.
Give
Thank
them
you.
a hand, guys.
Thank you to our speakers, dames en heren, ladies and gentlemen.